recording.
Okay, so our group is working on the Greensboro Massacre, which occurred on November 3rd, 1979. I think it's important too, just kind of like to play devil's advocate, to like take that bias of the document. Like you said, there was no KKK members that were interviewed. There was no police members that were part of writing this document. So like, there's obviously going to be a strong bias towards like that the police did an awful job and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I know in my section we talked about like during this time, like the WVO and like these communist parties were really violent kind of against the police, and like saying like it's like slurs like kill the police and like down with the pigs and stuff. So it's like, I think it's like the police didn't handle it correctly, but also too, like, I think like looking at the aspect from like the police point of view, if like these people don't want your protection and are saying like stay away from us, like don't get involved in our like business, then like they can't come back and like turn all the blame on the policemen in the end to say you didn't protect us when you're kind of going against police too. Like, I understand it's their job and cops aren't right for what they did, but I also think that a lot of the blame that was like passed on afterwards, like was kind of like looking for an out to pass the blame kind of thing.
I agree.
Looking for someone else to blame.
And how like the FBI gets blamed too, that like I think it was said that the FBI had, you know, the most information about it, and they just chose not to pass it on to the Greensboro police. And I don't know. Like, I do think they should have, knowing all of this now, but it's kind of a like hindsight 2020, like as if the FBI didn't have bigger things to worry about than like, oh, there might be violence at a parade. That's awful, but there might be, like what other things does an FBI agent have to deal with?
And this information too is coming from like a biased document that was like all on the WVO side and all like very anti-ticket and like police involvement type things. So it's kind of interesting to keep in mind.
I feel like overall the document like talks a lot about what the police like should have done and what they didn't do. And when you talk about like there's some police that actually did something, but they only like briefly mention them. Like there were 2 police that even when they were told not to, they went to the parade and like they started breaking up the fight. And it's like they only mentioned them for like 1 paragraph, and then they talked about all these other people doing what they shouldn't have been doing for like the rest of the time.
Mine, the only like single names they made were the people who did Dawson.
Yeah.
No, they really don't focus on like the good aspects of the costume at all.
Personally, I think it's clear that there was plenty of room for improvement, like on their part, but I wouldn't consider it like a conspiracy. I think it was just
I feel like
almost lack of communication.
I feel like it might have been more on the part of like the leaders, like the people that were in charge, like of planning and everything, and not the others, because like they were telling them to meet me here on the other side of town, now anywhere near where you're supposed to be.
Like maybe the leaders had their own personal motives and that like would speed the whole like police force into not doing their job.
Now we're going to talk about revising and rewriting the document and the different parts that we had. And so for the part I had about the rising of the KKK in North Carolina and then the FBI, obviously there were no KKK or FBI members interviewed in the process. So when they were writing, especially in the FBI section, they were really attacking Agent Butkovich and his involvement in the case, obviously. But they really like drilled him for not being clear about like what was going on, and again with the microphone being turned off, like they never said straight out that he was up to something, but it was heavily implied. And I feel like in a document like this, a reconciliation committee, that they should have both sides, like at least let them explain themselves.
Right.
And that didn't happen, so.
I think that can be seen kind of throughout the document too. Like it's like if they only interview one side, and they have a biased sample, then you're going to get a biased document.
Yeah.
And also like with the writers of the document, they said they were young, and or like a lot of them were like kids at the time this happened, which I find very interesting because then like your memories are going to be first of all probably very like choppy and if you were young, and then very subject to distortion from media bias, and like you said, there's reader exhaustion and people started like kind of having a biased view of it from what they were seeing in the media. When you're a kid, you're going to be more susceptible to that and have a harder time like thinking what actually truly happened and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like when you're a kid like that, and with all the racial tension that was going on, you're gonna listen to the adults around you, but there's so much racial tension that like you're gonna hear like a lot of racist comments, and it's just
Or you're gonna hear on the
affect how you
side
think. Yeah.
of the argument.
Red flag
I
that
feel like
there's
there should have been a lot more diverse. Just even reading what Andrew like summarized about the sample, there were 17 people, and the 14 like people that were actually like there and they were in their 20s and 30s when it happened were all members of the WVO, and it's like not everybody who was in the march was in the WVO, so like
Yeah.
none of those people are in there, and they didn't interview any of like the other side, like the Klan members or the police or anybody.
Yeah.
And then the whole like 13 of them were white and 4 of them were black, and it's like I'm pretty sure that it was not representative of like the racial breakdown of the
See how far